Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni moli wanji, namaste, jumbo. Bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so delighted and so very honored that you join us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Stitcher Radio, Good Pods, Podbean, wherever you find your podcast. Today, one of our super talented interns from Emerson College, Jordan Sahley, interviews Kathleen Strole Miller. Jordan, take it away.
Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Reading with Your Kids. Today, I'm joined by Kathleen Strole Miller, who is joining us from the cornfields of Indiana. Kathleen Strole Miller is the author of the Strolemoolies series. Kathleen, do you want to tell us a little bit about your books?
Yes, they are a series of children's books that are actually the vehicle is my family. My Strole family is my vehicle to getting this information out or sharing my stories of lessons that promote trust, respect, responsibility, caring, and family. This is a character education model that I used in my teaching career that has followed me through the years and given me great insight into how daily life lessons can be turned into real teachable moments for parents and teachers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that your stories are so family-centric. I think I saw on your website it is your great-grandfather and his children who this is based off of.
That's correct. My great-grandfather had only one child, and his son, Wayne, had 13 children. Wow. And I know. So my father was one of 13, and they were all farming. I mean, it was back in then, it was small farming compared to today's. But it wasn't until I actually went through my teaching career that I realized the values that I learned, from that daily life experience of living on the farm. But yes, he is the inspiration. And according to oral history from my aunts and my dad, he was the most loved reader. He read to their children all the time when they were so much younger. Now we're talking years ago. And reading to children and reading with children then was a big deal to him. And that's amazing in a farming family that you don't think of them, really being into Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. But it, they were. And his inspiration, I never knew him, but I felt like I knew him, because my dad would always talk of him. And, so I pick an event and I let him, and I use him to share the importance of being a good listener. So that's why Simeon's third year is about the great grandfather and the efforts he went to help children be a good listener, to quiet themselves. And it's just as amazing to me as I started writing. I felt like, I know this man. I seen this man. I could see him, a vision of him. Music was a big part, and is a part of all my stories. Every story has a little jingle. So there's a little rhyming jingle to kind of bring a little, hip hop, if you will, to, the lesson of being a good listener. He could hear the corn cracking. He could hear when the cows were needing to be milked. He could hear all those things that we always wondered why, like mom has eyes in the back of her head. Well, grandpa had the ears that could hear everything that was going on in the farm. Mm-hmm. So that's his, that's the foundation I think I started with.
Yeah, I saw that first book was Simeon's first year. You had 3 other books besides that one?
I have 3 other books done. I'm hoping to have, I have a story for each one of the kids. So I'm hoping to have a story for everyone. But yes, the other 3 books I have going, the first one that I tried self-publishing on and, kind of dabbled in that and then came back and hired an editor and an illustrator was The Updo Fix of Dorsey Moran. My Aunt Doris Moran, Strole, the story is about her character, not just about her. Now, the stories may be fictitious, but the lessons are real. She was the beautician of the family, always making everyone feel good, about themselves. Always there when you needed an updo fix for a wedding, even there at the funeral home. I mean, she was that person who was always there to help others feel good about themselves. She was a spitfire. She could work circles around anyone. So I took her characteristics and turned it into the Updo Fix, which is a story about everyone in the farmhouse gets the flu and can't go out and milk the cows. And so she has to milk all 26, gives them an Updo Fix, and gets more milk than ever before. And I always tell my kids, a cow doesn't give milk. You have to milk them. And she certainly goes out of her way to get the most out of the cows that she can, doing an unbelievable task of milking all 26. Now, mind you, she wasn't told to go out and do that. She knew that it had to be done. So she's a perfect example of assuming responsibility, seeing things that need to be done, having gumption to jump forward and take action. So her story was kind of the first one that I really kind of got excited about. And that's where we're at with that one right now. Again, every story has something to do with trust, respect, responsibility, caring, and family, which are the 5 core values that I focus on, and I focused on in my teaching career.
Mm-hmm. Teaching career, what grade levels do you teach?
Well, first of all, I was 12 years in social services and public welfare before I went into teaching. And that was working abuse and neglect and trying to treat the societal issues. After that, I moved into teaching, and I had a 26-year career. I taught high school, secondary, family, and consumer sciences, with mostly in child development, family life. I was not a textbook teacher. I was not a seating chart person. I kind of like to think out of the box, but it's easy in that area because I could do something with application. I looked at the big pumpkin that was down in the front office of the school, and it was 4 feet in diameter. And I thought, how many people would that feed? How would we generate enough heat? How would we convert the recipe? All those questions came to mind, posed them to the kids. It became a school-wide project where you really engage kids in bringing meaning and purpose to what you teach. So that's what I did. And I stumbled across the community of caring with Mrs. Shriver of the Kennedy Foundation, really got trained in embracing the idea of engaging character development right in the classroom, across the curriculum, not just a Band-Aid here and there. So that was going real strong. And then along came No Child Left Behind and standardized testing. So character education had to take a back seat. And I understand that. It wasn't, it was just one of those things. However, what happened was I was moved into my vocational home economics education area, and I started a child development center for 3 to 5-year-olds, and it served the employees of our corporation. Now, let me tell you, you think there's miles between an 11th and 12th grader and a 3 and a 5-year-old? No, it was much the same, but I had the best job in the corporation. But I developed that program into it was a win-win-win situation. It was a win for the high school students because they got to get college dual credits. It was a win for the parents because they had childcare. It was a win for the kids because I had to offer best practices for my high school kids to see, which in turn was a real win. I mean, it was a good teen pregnancy prevention mode too at that time, So anyway, that particular element of bringing early childhood into my teaching career really embraced my options to children's literature and how reading with children, not to, but with children, really got that brain working like a sponge. They can just take in every word and every illustration. I had used a literacy unit from McGraw-Hill, I think it's the right group, called Doors to Discovery. And it was a perfect example of making connections with what the children were reading and what they were doing. They actually ran a diner for their parents one day. And it was so much fun to see parents engaged in that learning process. They had lots of activities to do with their kids independently at home, plus what we did in the classroom. So thus became the evolution of the Strolemoolies of Fayetteville. As I embraced all that early learning, emergent reader opportunities, I began to think about, man, I have a lot of things that happened in my life that I could share and bring forward. And I have to credit Mrs. Shriver was one of those who really did inspire me to step outside of the box. And my husband, oh my gosh, he has been behind me every step of the way, but he's had a real presence in actually some of the elements in my stories. Mm-hmm. The Arabulis of Liberty Street is one that comes to mind where you respect diversity. And you have a lot of different people that you live around, and you have to learn to live alongside with them. You may not always agree with them, but you've got to learn to respect and live beside them. Mm-hmm. The Velveteen Rabbit. Oh my gosh, my one aunt, the Leah Rose of Real Strolemoolie, she was our Velveteen Rabbit. She lived to be 103, just lost her a year ago. Oh, wow. But her presence, her maternal presence in that home, in this family was just unbelievable. She was one of those, say what you mean, but you better mean what you say, and so often we have kids saying, I'm sorry. Kids will say, I'm sorry. Parents say, tell them you're sorry. Do they really mean it? This is the question.
I feel like kids don't really understand what sorry even means from that age.
No. And you're telling them at a young age, tell them to say, I'm sorry. Well, in her particular story, I use the risky behavior of her brother to, be very destructive around out in the farm with the animals and the garden and everything. And she finally has enough. And she really lets him have it. And of course, everybody is like, oh my gosh, nobody gets mad at Leah Rose. She really impacted that whole idea. Saying I'm sorry doesn't always mean that you mean it. So that was one that I just think of her as the Velveteen Rabbit, and that one comes to mind as well. The other literature that I think kind of inspired me was the Barnyard Song. Yes, the animals, lose their voices and everything. I took those high school students who were engaged in the early childhood setting out of the cornfields of Indiana, and I took them to New York City, to Chinatown, and we went into a child development daycare center there. We took our puppet show of the Barnyard Song, and it was there that they realized music is universal. You don't have to speak the same language. You could still get your message across. So for that reason, I really feel important to add music or a little jingle to my stories that I do. So those were kind of three of the little inspirational things of literature that kind of drove me into this. Mm-hmm.
At what point in your educator career made you believe like the Strolemoolies story is a story that needs to be told? At what point were you like, I want to sit down and write this book so everyone can see it?
I have to think it was when I took the kids to New York City, and the response we got from those kids, who many of them had never seen animals, like that before. And so, I mean, I put it in a suitcase, PVC pipe, took it, stood it up, put a corduroy facade on it. It looked like a barnyard front, and the kids stuck their puppets outside the windows of the barn. And the response we got was just so overwhelming. The teachers there said they had one little boy that wouldn't talk. He wouldn't talk to anybody. And for some reason, he was talking to us and making friends with people. And it was all because of music. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, yes, it doesn't matter where you live. You don't have to live on a farm to really have the opportunity to share and be kind and humble, with one another, and to learn to respect people, even though they may talk differently than you, they may look differently than you. You still need to, look at the whole picture. And I think it was that time in the daycare that I thought, no, when I retire, I got to do something more. I'm not ready to stop. And so ever since I've been retired, I've been at this. And it's been several years. So, and I think I was afraid of failure. So I didn't really pursue it. I just kept writing. But now I think, now I feel pretty comfortable. I know what I want to accomplish. I've been in the classrooms reading. I have a book signing this week, and I'll do some storytelling. And it is so gratifying to know that I can create an event and make it into a teachable moment.
Mm-hmm. That's so beautiful, like having teachers like this in the world. I know you said you're retired, but it just like makes me respect my childhood teachers even more, especially seeing how much you care. And I think it's a really beautiful story you're telling here. Do you
I
have
love
teachers that inspired you growing up?
Teachers that inspired me growing up, probably my first grade teacher.
Mm-hmm.
She was the most kind. She was in charge, but she was the most kind, gentle person. I had some uncomfortable health situation. I had a boil on my bottom, and I struggled with them all year. And she just did not do. And never was I ever embarrassed or never. She was just the kind, gentle soul, but yet teaching me some of the very basics. So I think my first grade teacher and my band teacher. Oh my gosh, my lovable band teacher. He taught me a lot about self-discipline, sticking in there, marching in the heat, if you will. But yeah, those were the ones that I recall the most.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, having a good teacher can really change your life for the better.
It can. I've had many come up to me since I've retired that I did not know were impacted by anything that I really ever did. But I just so want people to, and parents especially, to take the time with your kids. We at the dinner table is the biggie. Every story I have ends at the dinner table, and this has become a big deal. I don't know if you can see this or not. You probably see it on my website.
Yeah.
Okay.
I saw that.
And that's a table of 17. Now you won't believe this, but I have 17 at my dinner table when I have everybody over, and I cook every Sunday. I never know whether I'm having 5, 7, 9, 11, 13 or whatever. But anyway, my husband has been, he has been adamant about the fact that we sit at the table together. You don't fill your plates and go sit somewhere else. You sit at the table and you hope the food gets passed around to you. That's kind of the way it is at our table. But, the family dinner table is the last page of every book. And that's where, they talk, they eat, they dialogue. You have eye contact. Even my babies that are in, high chairs, they have their place at the table. And they may not be saying much, but you can see in their eyes. They're just looking around and everybody's talking. And, we have our trials and tribulations and our challenges and our disagreements, but we always come to the table. And that's what, I really have focused upon. I found the familydinnerproject.org. They have a lot of resources for families. And that Andrew Zimmern, he has the coolest show, Family Dinner Night. I watched that this last year. I'm thinking, yes, the family dinner. That's where we need, I just really want to focus upon that with my story. So every story ends at the family dinner table and they have their little moment of thanks and then they chatter. And that's what it's all about. Not being religious specific or anything like that. I'm not a political person, even though Mrs. Shriver, I came to know, but I do believe in just the common foundation of those 5 core values.
Yeah, I was reading about the Family Dinner Project on your website, and I saw it's big on like mental wellness, and it's important for mental health for kids to be doing that.
Yes.
And with like mental health being such like a big issue for younger kids nowadays, like I think it's more important than ever to be like talking it out with your family. Do you talk about like mental wellness or mental health like in your books, or do you touch on it?
I kind of subtly do. I know I'm going to have some support materials that I have some questions, that I have now made up, and I'll be adding those to my website, discussion questions for families that I think, touch upon, really thinking through how they're feeling and, searching for their inner self. As a parent, you're always wondering, what are they thinking? What are they, what's really going on in that mind? When they're at the dinner table, sometimes you can expose that. And I think that's probably the best time right now because of the daily pace that everybody goes in America. And families can't sit down every night. I know that, but man, when you get those times, you take advantage of them. Sit everybody down. The food may not be great, but let me tell you what's happening there is far beyond what's being fed to you. And I really do feel like the mental wellness is what we're struggling with. Like I said, and I don't want to downgrade the No Child Left Behind, the need for standardized testing, but we were on a great track at Westfield High School where I was at in terms of integrating character ed across the curriculum, not a special project, nothing like that. And I know that's like service learning was a part of this that Mrs. Shriver had, but you know what? It was intrinsic service learning. It wasn't, you got to do this to get a credit. It was, you want to do something for other people intrinsically. So those are the kind of things that I really feel strongly about. And I think we can attack mental health wellness with them.
Yeah. For character education, which you've brought up a few times now, what exactly would you, if you had the opportunity, would have liked to see incorporated into like a curriculum for character education?
Well, I think the easiest thing would be moral development. When you look at Kohlberg's stages of moral development, there are many questions that you can get a child to think above that third stage or that second stage of moral development in terms of what happens if we all do this? Just whatever it is, and I've used different scenarios and things like that, but it can be across the curriculum. It doesn't have to be, you can look at the story of the dot, the line, and squiggle and find something in math, talk about relationships, and you can bring up, the ever pending question, what happens if we would all do this? So I think it can be integrated in. It can be subtle. It can be integrated in. You just have to have the teachers that are willing to integrate that in. I know you have to think about what teachers are dealing with today. They're dealing with an IEP. They're dealing with diversity. They're dealing with all the other societal issues that, require us to be accepting of everyone. So whatever it is, I think it can come back into the curriculum, but it needs to be systemic. It can't be a Band-Aid. It can't be a special project here and a special project there.
Yeah, I think that's such an important thing for like kids to be learning. Because I remember in high school, I don't think I retained a single class except for my one teacher who decided to go over real life stuff like that and like taught the class how to be like better with empathize. And this is my senior year when I thought I was like too cool for things, and
Yes.
then he did that, and I feel like that changed the way I viewed the world. And I think if like kids got that from a younger age, it would help us greatly.
The benefit of having the Child Development Center adjacent to or at the end of the campus there in the high school was that teachers would bring their kids in from all other classes. They would read to them or they would do special projects. And I can tell you, you can bring in that roughest, toughest kid to that setting where the little ones are, and you find the soft side. They're in there. We just got to bring it out. Really. I think, and unfortunately, some people never get to do that until they're parents, and then they have no idea how to do that.
Yeah, which is why it's, as we like to like emphasize on this show, and you've mentioned earlier, it is so important to like read with your kids from a young age so that they can learn to see from other point of views, learn empathy.
Yes. Reading with children. I would say Cowboy and the Chicken Coop Tea Party is one that I really have focused on respecting others' perspective. Because the rooster is the mean old rooster of the chicken yard. And I read this at a book signing, and my only living aunt was there. And I was telling about this story because the rooster chases my dad from the outhouse, and he poops his pants. And this was a real story. She wanted to tell the whole story before I could even get through this. But anyway, the whole idea was that he didn't understand why the rooster was chasing him. The rooster was chasing him because he thought he was going to hurt the hens. So there's always, another perspective that we lose out on. So communicate with others regardless of your fears, and respect their perspective. So that makes it easy.
I love that story. Communication with people, especially your family, is so important. I cannot emphasize how much like communication will affect your mental health and otherwise.
It is. Well, the family is where you get your sense of belonging. The same thing at the dinner table. Everybody has a place, and there's a place for everybody. Don't sit in somebody else's place. You sit in the place you're supposed to be sitting in. But, on the farm, everybody has a name. My mom grew up as a coal miner's daughter, and my dad taught her to be a dairymaid. But I want to tell you what, every cow on our farm had a name. Everybody has a name. Everybody knows your name. And even some of the equipment, I have one writing about a tractor, Stevie D. And it's all about everybody has a sense of belonging. And that's what these kids, I think today, are really missing. The hatred and violence. There's something really missing there in terms of why they don't feel worthy and why they don't feel, respectful of others enough to not want to kill them. I mean, it just breaks my heart. But I, and that's why if I could do it through children's literature, oh my gosh, give me the opportunity. I'll swarm you with ideas, of how to do that.
Of course. Yeah. This is like more important than ever. I really, really am a fan of the Strolemoolies. Do you have any plans for their future at the moment?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Well, first of all, I would love to make felt boards and have puppetry and things like that added to it eventually. But as far as the stories, I'm ready to do the next 4. My illustrator, I told her, I said, I'm ready. I've got them all drafted. Because I want to do something about the one uncle who takes care of all the farm equipment, keeps it greased, oiled, and always working in tip-top condition. So there's that one, and he actually saves my father because my father fell off the fender of a plow and the plow jumped the furrow. And I'm going to say it's because somebody took care of the tractor. That's why that happened. But there's that one. And my dad was super about teaching my mom how to be a farmer's wife. I think he could teach a dog how to be a farmer's wife. I just really do. So it's probably going to be square dancing in the hayloft is what his is probably going to be about. Yeah. And I mean, I have 2 grandsons. They are little workaholics. They're laborers. I mean, they work in concrete, hard construction. They are workers. And when I hiked to the bottom of the Grand Canyon 4 years ago and back up, I learned how important and how wise those mules are that go down to the bottom and back up. And it's like my dad said, a mule can see all 4 legs at the same time. So it's going to be about the wisdom of the mules. And my mules are Dacky Doo and Debbie too. That's my grandsons. And my uncle, he's the one who was the wise one who could understand the mules more than anything. So it will be about the respect for the mules and what they foresee. And then, let's see, the 4th one, what was I thinking about I don't know. I've got them all listed. Every one of those 13 kids have something that I can tell a story about. And that's what I'm doing. You probably can't see, but I think I have this on my website, the pictures of the 13 kids.
Yeah, I can see that behind you.
Okay. That is the 13 kids and the grandma and grandpa, mom and dad that I use as my vehicle to tell my stories. Mm-hmm. And so I take them around to my cousins and say, okay, I got a story about your mom, and you want to hear it? Make sure they understand, because I don't want to offend anybody, but the real Stromoolie about my uncle, we dealt with alcoholism. I mean, alcoholics in the farm was nothing unusual. And he said, I'm sorry, a lot of times, so that's kind of the spin-off of that. But, I love telling stories. I love telling stories, and, the farm is a unique place if you live on it. If you don't, I'm sure you can have dogs, you can have fish, you can have any other kind of animals, and you still have the same respect, responsibility, caring for them, making them a part of your family. So, I can relate. I hope that this can be related to all families, not just mine.
Of course. Yeah. Growing up in a city, when I was reading hearing about the summaries of your books and reading into them and stuff, I felt like I could understand it. It's so important for kids to read from other points of views, even if they didn't grow up on a farm. I think it'll help them pick up on more, other perspectives that they could see from.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And, the thing of it is, you have to understand is that young children are trying to make sense of the world, and they're on overload because there's so much around them. So if you can take a book and you can read with them, and you can help them make understanding and comprehend what the story is really about, you've established a bond that will last forever. I mean, my 103-year-old aunt still talked about Grandpa reading her Henry Wadsworth Longfellow,
Mm-hmm.
So, and he was orphaned at the age of 12. So he didn't have an easy life either, but reading was key to him, to understanding the world around him. And he really imposed that on the kids. And he had every opportunity, only having one child, but having 13 grandkids, he took advantage of it. He really did.
Of course. Yeah. Before we wrap up, do you want to tell the audience where they can read up on you and your books? You have a website, right?
I do have a website. It's called Strolemoolies.com. Hopefully we have that STROLEMOOLIES.com. I have a website there. I got to do some work on it. I'm just all new at all this. I got to upgrade that a little bit. You can also email me at Kathy, KATHY, at Strolemoolies.com. And the books are available on Amazon. All 4 of them are available at this time.
Gotcha. Yeah. The Strolemoolies, honestly, sounds like a great book. I would show my kids that. I freaking love the hen. Which one's that called? The
chicken coop tea party. This one is about my Aunt Irene. You notice she has a red bandana on. She always wore a red bandana. She was our banty rooster, if you will. She was always out there leading the way because she was the oldest kid too. But yeah, Cowboy and the chicken coop tea party. That's that one.
Yeah, these stories all sound amazing. I love your dedication to educating children. It's something we find so important here on the podcast and stuff. And I had the best time talking to you. Thank you so much for coming on the show tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, have a good one.
You too.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Deborah Kempf Schumacher. She'll be here to celebrate peculiar primates. Deborah was on the show talking about freaky fish not too long ago. Now we're talking about peculiar primates. We always have a great time with Deborah. You're going to love this episode. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, we want to start by thanking our guest, Kathleen Strole Miller. Also want to thank my incredibly talented intern, Jordan Sahley. I want to thank the rest of the members of my team, Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, Skylar Strauss, Mirabella Q. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.